Hey guys, we've got Vocab Quiz number 3 the next time that I'll see you in class on the 25th and 26th. So some people used a video last time, thought it worked well, so I'm going to review just a few things. It may not be everything that you want to hear. I went over them in class, and if you have questions you can email, of course, but I want to review a few things. First and foremost, I don't think you'll have to use any of the gold sheet words in a sentence this time, as far as I can tell, looking at the various versions of the quiz. So it'll only be the blue sheet that you'll have to use in sentences or fill in blanks with. You want to make sure with the trickier words, I have the words up over here on my computer. With the trickier words, that you make sure you know how to use them in a sentence. You don't just look at the definition and think you know. Maybe look up some examples. Look at some of the words of the day that we've done. Mrs. Barney, who I co-teach with, A1 and A3, was talking about how most of the time when people miss the sentences, it's because they use it as the wrong part of speech. If it's a noun, they try to use it as a verb or an adjective, and vice versa. So be careful with words like cognoscenti, which is a noun, collusion, which is a noun, conducive, which almost always uses the word to after it, something being conducive to something else. Contemptuous, which is an adjective, corporeal, which is an adjective, and then delusion, which is a noun, and then diurnal. Okay, diurnal can change to diurnally, but make sure you know how you would use diurnal, which is an adjective, which means of the day or daily. And then the word derisive is pronounced derisive. You can change forms of words, of course, just make sure that you use them correctly. If you change the forms, like collusion and delusion change to collude and delude if they are verbs. Derisive changes to derision if it's a noun. And then, yeah, be careful that you understand how dissolute works as well, too. Dissolute is an adjective. So people commit collusion, or that's not right. Don't listen to that. People prove collusion. People participate in collusion. Corporeal, something is corporeal. Someone operates under a delusion, or can be deluded. Let's see here. And remember, cognizant is an adjective too. You become cognizant. You are cognizant of something. You're aware of it. You perceive it. And then someone's life can be dissolute, or their choices can be dissolute. Yeah, so those are most of those blue sheet words again. Yeah, and then someone says something in a derisive tone, or they have a derisive look on their face, or they make a derisive joke. That's how derisive works. Okay, yeah. And then on the gold sheet here, let me just double check here on the quiz, make sure I'm covering everything. Yeah, I think so. Now, as far as the gold sheet, you know, as always, you want to be able to create examples. So make sure you're able to create examples of consonants, or create an example of epistrophe, or create an example or explain an example of euphemism. Okay, you want to make sure that you can do that. Remember, epistrophe is similar to repetition, similar to anaphora, just at the end of sentences. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. Hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. The end of those phrases is repeated. And as far as the difference in how the effect is of anaphora versus the effect of epistrophe, it's probably not that big a difference. But if it showed up on the multiple choice, you'd want to remember epistrophe is at the end. And I always use the letter E to remember that. Epistrophe is at the end. Obviously, anaphora is at the beginning, doesn't work quite as well. But if you remember epistrophe, E, end, that will help you remember epistrophe is repetition at the end of successive phrases or clauses. Remember, consonants is any repeated consonant sound. Okay? It doesn't have to be at the beginning or at the end. Kick, conquer, and cry. Bad example, but you can see the conquer in there as well as kick. I guess it would be better if I said like sick, conquer, and cry, because then it's at the end of sick, it's in the middle of conquer, it's at the beginning of cry, but it's still a repeated consonant sound. Any consonant sound, s, you know, sh, those things can all be repeated. Denotation is the opposite of connotation, it's just the dictionary meaning of things, don't forget. Diction's an important word to know. You can't really demonstrate diction, but you could explain how word choice changes the meaning of something. Remember that ethos is just the same as appealing to ethos. Ethos, pathos, logos. It's the same. It's not any different. However, the reason it's phrased as the moral element that determines characters' actions is ethos, pathos, and logos are talking about the audience. You appeal to their emotion, you appeal to their logic, or you appeal to their sense of morality. And that's why credibility is important. That's why we say ethos is credibility, or appealing to authority is part of ethos, because you're not offending the moral element of your audience. They can believe you, they can trust you. Exposition on here has multiple different, definitions there. It's the analysis of a subject. Okay, if you expose something, you're explaining it, you're showing it, you're talking through it. It can also be the beginning of fiction or nonfiction, where you kind of present what you're going to say. You expose what you're going to say. Remember, euphemism, milder, less direct expressions are substituted for ones that are more blunt. Sometimes to consider the feelings of the person you're talking to, sometimes to make your content more palatable. And we talked about passing away being one of the most famous euphemisms in place of dying or, being dead. People say passing away to make it softer. And substitute swear words are euphemisms. And a lot of times euphemisms have to do with the audience. A lot of times. Sometimes it's the effect, how it sounds, how it feels, but usually that's the effect on the audience. And an epiphany can be used a lot in nonfiction. It's a sudden insight, something you suddenly realize. It happens a lot in life. Sometimes it happens for fictional characters, but in nonfiction, it's when somebody is explaining to us what they realized, explaining to us their epiphany, the insight that they had, helping us understand that as well. And then, don't forget an elegy. You don't have to create an elegy, but, make sure you know what elegy is, a poem in an elevated style, usually in praise of a deceased person. Email if you have questions before the quiz. Remember, it's words 21 to 30. Thanks a lot.